Friends, welcome back. Welcome back to another virtual church service. I am so stoked that you are here. Whoever you are, wherever you come from, whoever you love, whatever's going on in your life, yeah, I'm talking to you. Know that you're in the right place. Thank you for being here. I'm so stoked that you are here. My name is Nick. I'm the minister at Red Deer Lake United Church. We're an affirming church that gratefully gathers on Treaty 7 land. And what we're all about, what this will be all about, is finding in Jesus a new way of being human and alive in this world. A way of life that's connected to God, each other, and ourselves. A way of life that pulls us deeper into those beautiful things like hope, joy, justice, and love. A way of life that helps transform this world into the kind of world that God wants us to have. A world where everyone has enough and everyone has a place. So we are here to do just that. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here. Check in on the comments below. We'd love to know who's here. We'd love to know where you're from. We'd love to know what is going on. But all that to say, if you haven't been able to tell already, I'm glad you're here. So thank you. Be here. Be open. Know that you are in the right place. So a couple things before we get into our service. And just a couple updates to pass on your way, especially if you call Red Deer Lake home. Like everyone else in our world, the pandemic has thrown everything up in the air. It's turned it all upside down, and we're doing our best just to navigate it all and trying to figure out, how do we be the church in all of this? How do we still be a source of love and hope and meaning in all of this? How do we do that online? How do we do that in person? How do we take care of people? And so we've been busy trying to figure out all of that on top of just rotting this out ourselves, because this is tough, isn't it? Oh man, it takes a lot just to get through the day still. So at the church, we're figuring that stuff out. We're figuring out what this means for us long term. We're beginning to ask the big question of, what does post-pandemic church look like? How does this change fundamentally how we think of and practice church? Yeah, huge, huge questions. And on top of all of that, we have the doozy of the question, and that is, do we try to come back to physical services in the fall? Given the risk, given all the limitations we'd be required to make, is it worth coming back to church in the fall? And can we do that in a safe and meaningful way? And so late last week, 2 weeks ago, we asked you that question. We asked you, do you think it's safe to come back? Given all the risks and limitations, would you come back? Would you want to be a part of those services? Do you think it's a right move? And so thank you for all your responses. We had over 100 responses, and we have so much information and feedback to wade through. And the plan going forward is the board this week will figure that out, and they're going to make a decision. They're going to make a decision about whether or not we try to come back this fall. They're going to figure out, what does that look like? Is that the right thing to do? And they're going to let you know what they think. They're going to offer you their plan, and then we'll hear from you. And so thank you for all that feedback. Stay tuned if you're there itching. Be like, what are we going to do? What are we doing? Yeah, we hear you. We feel that too. But it's not an easy decision. This is not a black and white kind of choice. This is a really thick, sticky, and massive question, and we have to do what's right. We have to do the loving thing. Our faith calls for nothing less. And so stay tuned for a huge decision that we'll offer you later this week. But for now, we're here for this. And so let's put that on the back burner. Let's just not even think about that stuff. Let's figure that out tomorrow. And let's be here for this. So for you who are feeling a bit thin, for you who need to connect with God, for you who need a good, hopefully good word, this is for you. So again, whoever you are, wherever you're at, be here. Sit down, slow down, focus in, and choose to be here, because you are worth it. This is worth it. This is the stuff that brings us life. And we're going to start with this, a song about the God of life. This God who loves us no matter who we are or where we're at, and draws us deeper and deeper into a life of hope, joy, and peace and love. So whether you want to sing or just listen, it really doesn't matter. But this song is for you, and let us worship together.
Creator God, you gave us life. your image formed within our souls. Yet through the mist of time and space, we search for that which makes us whole. Through hands that paint majestic skies, and voices chanting melody, with words that reach beyond the page, we comprehend your mystery. In every flower and every tree, we see your great diversity. Yet greater still, we see your love expressed in our humanity. Through hands that paint majestic skies, and voices chanting melody, with words that reach beyond the page, we comprehend your mystery. When with our hearts, our hands, our minds, we share our gifts with all the world, our spirits soar beyond the veil to touch the very face of God. Through hands that paint majestic skies, and voices chanting melody, with words that reach beyond the page, we comprehend your mystery.
How was that? Hopefully that helped you arrive. Hopefully it did something good for you. And now that we're all here, now that we've all finished arriving, let's start with a prayer. And so do whatever you do when you pray. If you close your eyes and bow your head, awesome. If you lay down, great. If you need to move around, great. It really doesn't matter. There's no right or wrong way to do that. All prayer is opening ourselves up to the divine. All it is connecting with that source of our life and ground of our being, that God that holds it all together. So however you do it, go ahead and do that. And would you join me with a prayer? Let's pray. So God, here we are. All kinds of people from all kinds of places with all kinds of stuff going on. And so knowing this is a place where we can be real and raw, knowing this is a place where we can show up as we are, meet us here. Meet us here and do something. Do something good, something beautiful, something joyous, something transformative. Help us to leave here transformed, even if it's just a little tiny, tiny bit. And so God, let us take a big breath. Let us know that you are with us. And so we turn ourselves in this time over to you. And in the strong and liberating name of Christ, we say together, Amen. So what we're going to do today for most of our time together is we're going to sit with the story that's in the Bible. You can read along if you want. You're looking for Matthew chapter 14, verse 22. It's Matthew 14, verse 22. But I'm going to read it to you anyway, so if you're cool with that, just listen to me. But here's what I want you all to do regardless of that. I want you to listen to it. Because I know that for the vast majority of you, when you hear this story, you're going to be like, oh yeah, I know that story. And then what happens when I start reading it, you'll check out. But let's remember this truth. Familiarity breeds contempt. Familiarity breeds contempt. Whenever we think these stories, we know them so well, we've got them down, we actually start to disrespect the story. Yeah, we do that with so many of these stories. We think we know it, and we just default to that meaning, and we never let the story do its thing. And that thing is speaking to us where we're at. Yeah, Yeah, that's the thing about these stories. As we grow, as we evolve, as we rumble with different things, these stories do it alongside us. So no matter where we're at in life, there can be something new and beautiful in here. There can be something that resonates in here. And our job is to be open to it, to not shut it down and think we know it, but to read it every time like it's the first time. And so as we head into the story, let's put on those ears. Let's put away those preconceived ideas of what it means. And let's try to hear it for the first time. Pay attention to what gets evoked, what curiosities, what objections, what wonderings you have. And let's go with those instead of where you've already been. So my friend, a reading from Matthew 14 verse 22, and it goes like this. And yeah, I'm actually reading it from like a legit real Bible. I haven't held one of these things in so long. Is that terrible for a minister to say? I just use my phone for everything. Anyways, the story goes like this. Immediately after what? And so right before this story takes place, the feeding of the 5,000 takes place. That's a story where Jesus magically feeds over 5,000 people. So once that's done, this story immediately takes place. So immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into a boat and go ahead to the other side of the lake. That's the Sea of Galilee. And he would stay put and dismiss the crowds. After Jesus dismissed the crowds, he went up the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. But by this time, the boat full of disciples, was battered by the waves. And interestingly enough, this is kind of cool, the word battered here actually means tormented. It means bullied. So the boat full of disciples was being bullied and battered by the waves, and it was being pushed further and further and further out from land, for the wind was against them. And early in the morning, he came walking towards them on the lake. Jesus came walking towards them on the lake. But when the disciples saw him walking on the water, they were terrified, saying, "It's a ghost." And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them and said, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." Peter answered him, "Lord, if it's you, command me to come to you on the water." And so Jesus said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat, started walking on the water, and came towards Jesus. But when Peter noticed a strong wind, he became frightened, and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught him, saying to him, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" When they got back to the boat, the wind had ceased. And those in the boat worshipped Jesus, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." Hear what the Spirit is saying to the church. So what did that story say to you? As you listened to that story for the first time, what evoked within you? What rose up within you? What questions? What curiosities? What objections? What happened in your imagination? What did you feel? What's going on within you as you sit with that story? And now I know we usually jump to what I think, but I want to press pause and spend some time with what you think. Because that's the most important thing here. As great as it is to offer you my take on it, what we really should be paying attention to and spending some time with is what happens in each and every one of us. Because if we believe that God does meet us where we're at, and if we do believe that these stories can speak to us, we need to spend some time in that intersection. We need to spend some time rumbling with the stuff that gets evoked within us, because it's that stuff. It's those questions and images and frustrations and resistances, all that stuff. That's the stuff. That's where the magic happens. That's where the growth happens. That's where the reckoning happens. And so before we jump into my one thought about this story, I want you to hit pause and write down the things that you're feeling. Write down your questions. Write down where this story prompted you to go. And then later on, when you've got some time, go back to it. Spend some time with it, because I guarantee you that's the place where God is asking you to go. That's where the Spirit is leading you. And that's where you'll find some, maybe uncomfortable, but you'll find some growth and transformation there. So hit pause, spend some time writing things down, and then come back and we're going to talk about geography. Yes, geography, because who doesn't want a sermon about geography? Are you doing it? Are you writing things down? Go, write things down, hit pause. Seriously, go and do it. Do it. All right, I'm going to assume that you hit pause. I'm going to assume you've got a nice list of things that you can explore later on. And the thing that this story evoked within me has to do with geography. Because here's the thing about these stories, and even our own stories and what we experience in the world. And that thing is this. Where these stories take place is just as important as what takes place. Where the story happens is just as important as what happens. When the first writers of these stories would tell them, the audience knew that what takes place in the background is just as important as what takes place in the foreground. They knew the setting held just as much meaning and wisdom and truth as the action. And this story is such a great example of this, because where this story takes place is just soaked in meaning and symbolism and really good, powerful stuff. And where does this story take place? Think back to the story. Where's the two dominant places it happens? We've got the mountaintop where Jesus went, and we've got the sea where the disciples went. And we're not talking necessarily about literal mountains and seas. We're going much deeper than that. We're zooming out quite a bit more than that. When we talk about mountains, we're talking about the sacred places. We're talking about the thin places, those places where heaven meets earth. These places where you go, regardless of what they are, and you walk in and you just feel a reverence. You feel a magic. You feel something buzzing in the air, and you just know deep down inside of you that God is in this place. So who has a mountaintop experience? We all have got one. We know that feeling of going into a thin place and just being overcome with God's presence. And that's what we talk about when we talk about mountains. We're talking about those kinds of places. That's where Jesus went. And when we talk about sea, the place where the disciples went, we're talking about exact opposite of the mountains. We're talking about those places that are chaotic, those places that are dark, those places that are difficult, those places we can't breathe. Those places we go, and once we enter into them, they're so uncomfortable, so overcome with chaos that we know that God could not be in this place. And we feel loneliness, we feel helplessness, we feel suffering, and something deep down inside us is just saying, get out of this place, because this is not a good place to be. God is not here. Anyone know those places? Yeah, we all know seas too. We've all encountered that kind of place. And because we know both of those places, I wonder if this is true for you. I think this is true for all of us. But because we know there are places where there are mountains, and we know there are places that are like seas, we engineer a life that's all about escaping the sea and moving towards the mountain. We'll do anything to avoid the pain and chaos, and we'll do anything to seek out the joy and beauty and reverence that we find in the mountains. Right? Does anyone do that? Yeah. Whenever we're in pain and suffering, the only thing we want to do is get out, because we want something better, we want something good, we want to go where God, truth, beauty, wonder, love is. But I wonder, and here's the thing about this story, I wonder if that's the wrong way to view the world. I wonder if this story has given us a very different way of understanding how our world works and how our world is ordered. Because what I see happening in this story is the truth that God isn't in the mountains and not in the sea. But in fact, God is everywhere. God's in both the mountains and the sea. That no matter where you go, no matter what is happening around you, you can still experience the thinness, the sacredness, and the reverence and say, God is in this place. Because what would happen if we viewed the world that way instead of the other way? Yeah, I mean, it would change everything, wouldn't it? But not in a comfortable way. Because suddenly, instead of our pain and suffering becoming places we want to escape from, suddenly they become places we actually have to enter into more deeply. Suddenly they become places we actually have to sit in, to get wet in, because it's there. It's there we can still experience God's presence. It's there we can still experience the truth that we need to hear. Yeah, our pain, our suffering, our chaos, our uncertainty, our doubts, we're not meant to run away from it. We're not meant to escape those things because God could be somewhere else. We're actually meant to go deeper into it because it's there in it that we can find the thing we're looking for. It's there that we can encounter God. It's there we can find the truth and the wisdom and the presence that we need to get through it. Yeah, not an easy truth this week. Our pain is meant to be sit in. The seas are meant to be journeyed into, not run away from. And so as we sit with this story, I wonder, what pain do we have going on that we need to enter into? What's going on in our lives and our world that is just so chaotic that we want to run away from it, when instead we should actually journey deeper into it? What pain do you have? What chaos do you have? What do you need to enter into, trusting and knowing that it's there in it that we can experience God's presence? So my friends, that's the work this week. Is to look for the chaos, to go out into the sea and know and trust that it's there in it that we can experience God's presence, that we can find something to get through it and remember and know that we are not alone. So my friends, grace and peace be with you.